Today is episode 2 of our 12-part series, and this one is a little bit of a heavier one, but it's one of the most important steps in your journey of healing. And because you're here, because you're watching these videos, I want to acknowledge something right away, and that is by showing up, by listening to these hard videos, it tells me that you're a fighter and that you're fighting for yourself. But I want you to know, and this is something that I had to learn for myself, that as we fight for ourselves, the Lord is right there fighting for us and with us. And you, if you're a Christian, if you claim that Jesus is your Lord and Savior, the victory is yours. So I hope that you can walk in that identity, because as these videos progress and as you get language around what's happened to you, you're going to need to hold on to that so that you can be unshakable. So this video and this episode isn't about reliving details or forcing labels. It's about clarity. So many women stall in their healing journey, not because they're unwilling to walk through healing, but because part of their story never had language. And when something finally has language, it loses its power and does not allow you to stay hidden anymore. And shame no longer has the final say. And because you're here, you probably already know that something has happened to you in your past that constitutes as sexual abuse. But understanding abuse more clearly is often what allows us to heal and to move forward. Many survivors survive by minimizing, normalizing, softening the language around what's happened to them, or explaining away experiences, not because they want to lie to themselves, but because that's how we survive. So today's conversation is about gently bringing clarity to what sexual abuse really is, not to overwhelm you, not to rehash details, but to help you see that violations come in many forms. And if something has crossed your boundaries, if something confused you, if something was painful after it happened, or has taken something from you, it matters and it needs language around it. So, my hope is that as we talk through this, some of you may recognize pieces of your story and now go, it finally has language. And when something has language, it's no longer a dark secret. And that clarity is not meant to bring you more pain, it's meant to set you free. So, I'm going to take a moment to read a definition from the Shelter from the Storm book that we use for our healing study called Shelter. And so when I first heard this definition read out loud, something in me shifted. I was no longer able to hide behind the language that I used, which was something sexual happened to me when I was 6 years old. I now had to call it sexual abuse. That was hard for me because I was finally getting to a point where I was saying I was powerless at one moment and somebody took advantage of me. And being the tough girl, I did not want to be associated with that word powerless. That really made me feel weak and small. And so I think, though, it set me free. Having that language around it and being able to say I was sexually abused, it set me free. So, this is the definition. Sexual abuse includes any sexual activity, verbal, visual, or physical, engaged in without consent, that is emotionally or physically harmful and that exploits one person to meet another person's sexual or emotional needs. Consent is not possible when a person cannot reasonably choose to consent or refuse due to age, power imbalance, dependency, level of understanding, or the nature of the relationship. Sexual abuse does not have to involve physical contact. It often begins by violating emotional or psychological boundaries long before any physical boundary is crossed. Most abuse does not involve force, and often the abuser is not a stranger. So, this moment isn't about revisiting the details for yourself. It's about clarity, and clarity is one of the first ways that God begins to restore what was broken and what was taken from you. So, Shannon, I want to start here. Why do so many survivors minimize what happened to them even years later?
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of answers to that. Excuse me. Um, Sometimes we suppress So if you're anything like me, when it happened to me at 8 years old, I literally stuffed it and forgot that it happened. And so suppression is when something's happened to us, but we stuff it so down in the back of our minds or souls that it literally doesn't feel like it exists to us. But the issue with that is it does, and you're still living out the effects of it unknowing. And what happened was when I turned about 25 years old and I was getting my daughter fingerprinted, just seeing her at the same age I was abused, all of the memories came. So, and after investigating and bringing it to the light with the family, other people confirmed that it was true. So suppression is a very real thing. And that's one reason. Another reason is one thing that you said, I love, Nicole, that was super hard for you was with in your strength, the strong woman you are, having to identify with the powerlessness. It's very hard to say, I have to identify as a sexual abuse survivor now. It's something you have no control over. Like you said, it's a violation of boundaries, but we have no control. And it's almost this feeling of like, no, it's not fair. And so it's denial. We deny it because it's not fair. We had no say or control at all. And you wake up one day and you're a survivor. And so some people in their denial they don't want to go there at all. In addition to that, it's the feeling. They don't want to feel all of the emotions that are going to flood you that are associated with naming and claiming what happened to you. Even though, as we continue to talk today, there's so much freedom, there's so much healing and peace that comes with identifying with the language, less loneliness and shame. But the thought process is, no, 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 I can't feel this because it's trauma that feels like a bully beating you up with the emotions that arise. So there's so much.
And would you also agree that if you were sexually abused by somebody, like the statistic says, no love and trust, would you agree that that means that that unpacks a whole bunch of other things where you have to look into, okay, this was somebody that my parents allowed into my home. This was somebody that I felt safe with for whatever reason, if they were a babysitter or whatever. So you have to almost now start looking at or considering the fact that your parents didn't protect you, or
Right?
that if they were very protective parents, for some
Yeah.
reason you didn't feel safe telling them.
Yeah, 100%. And you literally named a lot of those emotions that I say are so hard for people to accept. The reality of the people who are supposed to protect me did not. The reality of, in some situations, this happens a lot. One parent was not able to give the physical affection or the emotional attunement that that child needed and was okay with this other adult doing it, not realizing that they were throwing their child into the lion's den. The reality of maybe what if it's a family member that did it to a family member, the being groomed by somebody. So you're 100% right, there's so much. And then normally what happens too is after you've identified one incident, you can start to see so many of them. And it's a lot of disappointment to carry initially. You grieve and you get through it, but initially it's a heavy weight when all of a sudden it's like a domino effect, or like when a movie's on fast forward. Once you start to name things, it's like everything makes sense, and it is utterly disappointing at first, and scary. It's like, who can you trust, you know?
Yeah, and yeah, it's also like you almost feel like a sense of grieving because you're grieving the recognizing now, like I was sexually abused.
Yeah.
So that means that my little 6-year-old self was altered and changed. My identity,
Mm,
who God created me to be, became shifted. And then,
mm,
and well, obviously I have language around it now, but like,
yeah.
there was lies that were planted in you in that moment, whether if they were spoken lies or unspoken lies. They
Right.
communicating to you, one, at least for me, um, I don't care about you. I'm going to take what I want.
100%.
And then after that abuse happened, and for me, the mother walked in and never came over to me, never said anything to me. She only scolded me. So she
Mhm.
only affirmed what was not spoken to me, but a lie that was planted in my heart, that like you're dirty and you deserve, or not. I don't think I thought you deserve this, but I think I thought like you cannot tell anyone because you just
Mhm.
got yelled at by this lady.
Mhm. Mhm.
So shame tells you that you are bad. And then, and also when she scolded me, it kind of made me like I did something along with him. I
Mhm.
partnered with him in this violation.
100%. It makes you feel like you did something wrong. And, therapeutically, it's also compounded trauma because you're in the most vulnerable state of your life. You were just sexually abused. And while you're the weakest, most vulnerable you've ever been, another bully comes in and attacks. So it's a very complex form of trauma that happens to you, and it's real. It's almost like you get beat up by one person, and then right when you open your eyes, somebody else comes back and does the same thing. It's like hit after hit in a very, very vulnerable situation that you went through. So it's hard.
And then your own voice becomes a bully after.
Yes. Yes.
Bully
Yeah.
tells you to not say anything and that
Hmm.
you're going to get in trouble if you say something, or no one's going to believe you, or don't think about it, just don't think about it. I mean, that right there is like, that became my toxic trait to help me survive, but also I was able to use it in all these other types of relationships.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
if you just don't think about it, you're good,
Mhm.
right? You don't have to deal with
Yeah.
it.
And you know what I think about when you say that? Like, I don't know if any of the women watching this can relate or if you can, but most women who have been sexually abused are phenomenal detachers. We dissociate from reality. We dissociate from, pain or the reality of toxic situations. We just dissociate, and it's become a superpower that we learn in
Mhm.
situations like that. It's self sabotaging at times, right? To be disconnected and not intimate and all of that. But at the time, it was a learned behavior where that was the only way we could get through it. Like, how do you, as a little girl, wrap your head around? I was just molested, something wrong just happened, I was sexually abused, and now I have a grown up who, as kids, we want to please the adults yelling at me. Like, I don't know if you personally, but a lot of us in that time coped by disconnecting and detaching from what was actually going on in that moment. Or, like you said, to not speak or to not think about it, because that was the only way to avoid the pain of what's happening. And then we carry that on with us the rest of our lives. We avoid, we detach, we stay away. There's a therapeutic term. When I have a client and I have the case conceptualize, like figure out, like analyze what her treatment plan is going to be, I have to look at their movement. And as humans, we have movements where we lean into people or we move away. And literally, like 8 times out of 10, sexual abuse victims, they're two polar extremes. They either completely move in because they have a poor decision making because they haven't healed yet from the sexual abuse, like they keep repeating the pattern, or there's no balance, or they're completely avoidant, and they avoid people, intimacy, all of that. So there's a lot of effects that come from those initial lies you were talking about. I
Yeah.
see you smiling. Does any of it resonate with you?
Oh my gosh. But now I'm like, I'm gonna be cautious every time I'm like talking to somebody like, hi, I'm Nicole.
Take it. It's just a thing therapists see.
Very cool. No, I like it a
Yeah.
lot. I think we say a lot more in our nonverbal than we do in our verbal. I
Yeah.
would agree with a lot with that.
Mhm.
Okay, so the next question is, when women hear a definition like we just read for the first time, what reactions do you commonly see?
Yeah, I love that question because it's the most pivotal part of healing. Not just when I do therapy, but even in ministry with the ladies who are healing, um, different stuff. So a lot of times they break, and we have to be very discerning. Is she ready? It's eventually going to happen. If you're in Trees of Hope, if you're in Calvary House for Women, if you're in therapy, mentorship, eventually we have to face that. So it's regardless. And so when they're telling their story and we do name, okay, you do know that sexual abuse, one or two things. They break crying because, like you just said perfectly, they have now confronted their trauma and they have to grieve it like a death. When somebody dies unexpectedly, you don't expect it. It's not fair, and you're forced to grieve. You're forced to. So when they finally realize, or they're told, hey, we give them psychoeducation, like we're doing now, like it's all of what we're doing today in a couple minutes, so they can't deny it. And then they cry and they grieve because now it's like a death. Because what was alive was the fact that I was never a sexual abuse victim.
Mm.
And that truth dies. And that's where what you talk about, the grieving, comes in. Or we get the I'm crying because I feel so validated and I don't feel crazy because I always knew it was, but I didn't have a language for it, or I was always told it wasn't. Because you know better than me, Nicole. Unfortunately, that happens a lot. So wait, what happened? Did he have sex with you? Well, no. Well, you weren't raped. Did he penetrate you at all? No. Did he touch you at all? No. Well, then you weren't sexually abused, and you feel crazy because you know something so wrong happened. Like a good example I can give you is I had a woman, and she shared her testimony, so I know she's okay with this. Um, Her dad used to come in the shower when his friends were there and talk to her when she was showering. And keep in mind, she was about 17. And he'd come in and he would use the bathroom. He'd come in, open the shower curtain, use the bathroom, talk to her, close it, and walk out. And she's like, and as we're healing and all this, she was in Calvary House. She's like, that always felt wrong, but like, I don't know. And I'm like, do you realize that was a form of sexual abuse? She's like, but he didn't touch me. I go, do you see the sexual violation in that? You were 17 years old and your father's coming into the bathroom, pulling out his penis, and I hate to be vulgar, but peeing and then opening the shower and staring at you. And then on top of that, would let his friends come in to do the same. Nicole. Yeah. Would let his drunk friends come in to do the same. And so when she heard that hard truth, there was immense tears of I always knew it was wrong. And he told me I was crazy for thinking it was wrong. So thank you so much. And you could literally see and she broke crying, but it was more about I'm not crazy. That was wrong. And I wasn't crazy for how I felt. So those are normally the two responses.
Oh, God bless her.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the visual form of sexual abuse is always the hardest for people
Yeah.
to recognize, like, but he didn't touch me, he didn't do anything, he just exposed me. He kept exposing himself to me. It's like, well, you
Yeah.
were visually sexually, did you consent to that? Were you like, yes, please show me your penis right now?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. No. No.
Okay, yeah, so the visual form and also the verbal form is also
Right.
another hard one, which is like, you know, I mean, we've all been sexually abused if we put catcalling in there, but like,
Yeah.
when a boss or some, and we're still talking about like power dynamic.
Power dynamics.
That's a
Yeah.
huge one. But when a boss comes into the office and, for instance, starts saying like sexual things to you, or maybe not even saying it to you about you, but like talking about sexual things to you
In front of you.
in
Yeah.
front of you, or maybe shows you. I had a woman once where a boss would have pornography playing in his office. That's a visual form of sexual abuse, but also a verbal one because she's hearing it and he's like,
Yeah.
"You like that?" Or like saying
Yeah.
different things to her. I mean, I've had multiple women share this type of stuff to me, and I'm like,
Right. Right.
"What? Who does that?" It's so like, but they're
He is sexually
desensitizing it.
abusing her because he's forcing her to engage in it in one form or another with
Yeah,
him. So
right.
he may be talking to her, but if she's hearing and he's communicating with her, he's getting off on that.
Yeah.
And let it alone if it's a boss like Nicole. Don't get me started on power dynamics. I don't rate any level of trauma. Like some people believe in big T and little t. I respect the perspective, big trauma, little trauma. Respect the perspective, and they do great work. I do not. Trauma to me is trauma to me. Now, however, I'm saying that as a disclaimer. When you have a boss who is doing anything, or any a boss, a leader, an authoritative figure that comes into the mix with sexual abuse, it's a whole nother level of helplessness because of the power dynamic that is in place where you've already been trained to be submissive. They already have a mental and emotional, whether it's in a good way or bad way, mental and emotional control over your mind and your heart. And it's a grooming on another level to where people are more liable to either not fight back or to even name it because this person has been the authoritative figure. it's so wrong, and it's so much easier to do when you're in authority or any form of power over somebody. It's another level. It's easier access for a
Yeah.
predator when they're sexually abusing somebody.
Yeah, and most of the time, like the definition said, they will be using those tactics, like you talked about it's a grooming tactic to
Yeah.
desensitize you to what will eventually come. And in most instances, when I've heard similar stories like that, it
Mhm.
always ended in some form of rape.
Well, I'll tell you something, and I feel completely. This is the first time publicly I'm going to share this, but it's public record, so I'm okay with it. Years ago in my addiction, I had a boss who would always call me into his office. It started this way and ask to see my tattoos. And I would show him my tattoos. And then this is when I was part of my testimony is that I was in a domestic violence situation, strung out on drugs. And so he reached out to my father and said, I want to mentor your daughter and help her get out of that situation. Well, slowly but surely, he hit me with the ultimatum of if you don't have sex with me, you're going to be fired. And a lot of your other family members that work for me are going to be fired too. I never named that as sexual abuse until Trezo. Never. I'm like, well, I consented, right? We talk about the consent thing. Well, he didn't force. Well, but after learning, after Teresa opened some, school for therapy, those are the power dynamics we're talking about. And let me tell you something else that was interesting. Um, Long story short, there were legal ramifications that were in place, and not because honestly, I knew the Lord would seek vengeance. I don't counsel, and me and you are the same with this. We don't counsel every woman to press charge, but I kept seeing women that were coming into his office, getting younger and younger, and to the point where it was underage. So when I did the legal ramifications, I said he said, well, what do you want from me? I'm sorry. I should have never done it. You're right. Adeline, what do you want from me? I said, I want you to stop because you're bringing women in. I want you to stop. And if you don't, I'm going to keep moving forward. So that was the motive God gave me. But then, so long story short, fast forward, come to find out about 5 to 6 other women who shared their stories. Guess what? The first thing they said was, he asked me to see my tattoos, the owner of the company.
Yeah.
So to support the grooming that you're
Mhm.
talking about,
Oh, yeah.
they find a way in with their power.
I had a doctor who did some when I worked for him, I did similar things, not see my
Mhm.
tattoos. I used to have like he would be like, "Well, why don't you come in the office?" And he would check my glands. "All right, well, now I need to check your glands underneath your armpit." And, "Oh, do you," and then checking my chest area. But there was always a woman in the room. But I will say this, that woman was also being groomed and
I was just gonna, you took the words out of my mouth.
was totally desensitized in her own way. So if
Mhm.
anything did happen, the thing is that even though I was you could sexually harass me up until a point, and
Mm.
then I would
Mm.
pretty
Mhm.
much whoop your ass.
Yeah, good for you, girl.
But it was never a good thing because then it was like, wait, you accepted this all the way up until now it's like I'm ready to fight. Like now
Yeah,
you've crossed the line.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
The unhealed Nicole.
but at the same time, because you know what it was, and I just started getting language around it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to seem like I can hang with the guys, like I can hang like a guy. Like you want to talk
Mhm.
dirty? I'm not. I don't want to be like a prudy. Like I can
Yeah,
hang with
yeah.
that
That was
language,
your trauma response. Yeah.
right? So
Mhm.
it's it. When I look back on it, I'm like, what was wrong with you? But at the
Mhm.
same time, knowing that now, no one obviously would ever be able to do that now. But at the
Yeah.
time, I being able to put language on it now, looking back and saying like, "Hey, he was clearly manipulating me and he wasn't just sexually harassing me. He was trying to get me to sleep with
Mhm.
him." And when he would do
Mhm.
things like that, he was violating me. And I was able to, when I went through my healing group, which is so funny. I just said this the other day. I said, I've gone through this program so many times, like maybe three
Yeah.
times, but all of them, I was the leader.
Mhm.
But I saw myself as a participant every
Yeah.
single time. So I was
The
like,
Lord will do
when I was
that.
participating, I was like, wait a minute, I was the leader in that group. But long story short is that It's funny because I went through the first time and dealt with only the sexual abuse I experienced when I was a kid. Then when I
Right.
went through the second time, I was like, I'm going to start dealing with the sexual harassment that
Good
I've
for
had in
you.
my life.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I have to be honest, even as the leader, I felt a little like a weakling admitting, I don't anymore, but I felt at the time, I felt small and I felt silly dealing with it because I'm like, there was this just mindset of like, why make such a big deal about sexual harassment? It's not like
Mhm.
he raped you. But I love that you said the T trauma, little T, big T. It's like it does not matter. It does
Yeah,
not matter if you were
it
human
doesn't.
trafficked for 20 years or if there
Mhm.
was sexual harassment. It wounds the soul. It distorts
Well,
identity.
and yeah, and one of the biggest things I'm thinking of as you're talking, it all affects your perception. So, like one thing I love about you too, Nicole, is we're very big on Trees of Hope, Calvary House for Women. We are not man haters. We both have husbands that we love. I have men in my life, pastors, friends. So do you, that we adore and are safe places. But that's why it's so important to heal because something, if we don't name it and face it, all of it, the little, the big, everything, like you just said, our perception gets warped. And now you're either you either have no perception and no judgment of who's not safe for you, or your perception is that everybody's bad. And so that's something too that I have to work through with the ladies as they learn to interact with men again. Some of them are fine, but then some of them are like, was that off? And I'm like, no, that was quite normal and you're safe. But if you don't ever name it and work through it, that's what can happen. You're walking around the rest of your life with this warped perception and never able to have intimate, rational, healthy relationships with anybody. And that's why too, I even have it on my therapy site. Like if I'm going to do work with you, we're not going to minimize anything because the effects of that are your perception's not clear. The effects of that are you still have unhealthy trauma responses, whether you like it or not. This is what happens when we don't name it. And it sucks, but accept it and then work through it with the Lord so we can heal, you know?
That's so good. Yeah, I
Yeah.
try to get women to understand that when they come into the healing group is like it's what you're here for. So
Yeah.
this is hard work, right? So you've got to do the work. You put into it what you get out of it what you put in. So if you don't want to do
Yeah.
the homework, that's you're only hurting yourself. It's not hurting
Yeah.
me. Because people think that they're hurting me by being like, well, I'm not
Yeah.
going to do the homework. It's like, okay, well, sorry, that's going to
Mhm.
affect you, not
And
me.
then unfortunately, and this is, I can relate to that with Calvary House as well. And I've co-led a couple of your groups. You see the fruit. So it's like, I think it's like you can do that. We're not going to force you. Like you said, Nicole, you're not offending us. But then when you see the women who have given it their all, even when they feel uncomfortable, you see the difference afterwards,
Oh, yeah.
and you're like,
Totally. So the next question is why is there such a strong belief that abuse has to involve force or intercourse for it to count?
well, number one, it's easy, tangible evidence. And this is where the enemy has a field day with us because it's deceit. It's very easy and that's been around for centuries. Penetration, rape. It's also society and culture. And this is all types of culture, whether it's within the church or in the world, it's everywhere. To that, if there was not penetration, because remember, before even sexual abuse and molestation became language, historically, it was just rape. And that was a new thing, right? Because of kind of the barbaric culture that there was in society long, 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 long time ago. Then we accepted the term rape, right? And then with time, praise God, education and even the Lord and some biblical enlightenment, right? We've been able to name and really learn what is right or wrong. But it all goes back to culture and society and people accepting new evidence, and that's why it gets fun with the black and white Christians or not Christians, right? There's evidence to why we name what we do, and so it's just people evolving with what we learn about healing and humanity and accepting the new and learning and accepting that just because there's not physical, tangible interaction, that doesn't mean anything. Like people need to accept. And then a lot of people don't want to take the time, I feel like, and you've probably experienced this in conversations to digest why. Because when you tell somebody that sexual abuse without penetration, unless you're kind of dogmatic and robotic, you'll have some people that will trust and say, okay. But anybody, even people who have never been sexually abused, you have to explain to them why. And then once you do, it makes sense. And you did a lot of that in the opening of this, the violation of boundaries, the non-consent. But if there is consent due to power dynamics, and then you explain, and then and I'll tell you this, this is what is so cool about all this. Very rarely, you still have the people that'll do this, but very rarely after I explain it, do you, unless somebody's like an abuser themselves, do you have somebody say, I still don't get it? And no, 9 times out of 10, it's, oh, wow. You
Mhm.
know, but people taking the time to get educated and to learn the new, you know?
Yeah, a lot of people don't even wanna have these conversations. They don't wanna talk
Mhm.
about what sexual abuse is. It's off-putting, it's not fun to talk about. I totally get that. But
Yeah,
I think that putting your head in the sand is why we are where we are in society right
exactly.
now,
Yeah.
and why a lot of kids are being sexually abused
Mhm.
because it's easier to look away than it is
Mhm.
to look at what's right in front of you. My
Yeah.
mom was telling me a story when she was a kid. She had a friend who there was a boy who came up to them and said, "Do you want candy?" And my mom was like, in my heart, I knew I didn't, my parents would kill me if I went with him. So the
Right.
girl was like, "Yeah, I want candy." So she went with him. And so hours go by, my mom's kept looking out the window, she doesn't see this girl, she looks out the window, and finally, the mom and a police officer come to the house and say, "Have you seen this girl?" And my mom's like, "No, I left her hours ago with the boy down the street." They end up finding her naked in the basement, of his
Mhm.
house. So the brother of this girl drags her by her hair home in the street naked. And my mom's like, "I'm looking outside and that's all I see." So my mom's telling me this story. She's told me this story so many times, but for some
Okay.
reason, this story was told to me like recently. And while my mom was telling me it, I go, "Mom," and she goes, "But nothing happened to her." And I go, "She was sexually abused." "No, she wasn't. She was not sexually abused, Nicole." And I said, "Well, how do you know that?" "Well, she told me she wasn't sexually abused." And I said, "But mom, she was told to take off her clothes and she was naked in front of this boy. Do you not find that to be a sexual abuse at all? So if somebody asked me to do that when I was your daughter, you wouldn't think that was sexual abuse?" And so she's just like, "Oh." And I'm like, and in my mind, you're a little bit sexually abused too. I mean, it's crossing a line by having this young lady be forced naked down the street holding her hair.
That was my next thing. He exploited her.
Yeah.
And in some minds, you know, and this is hard for people to accept too. It's not, you know, if you're a man watching this, we're not saying you are a predator, but there can be tendencies that you're just unaware of because you're not educated. But dragging a woman down the street naked is number one, physically abusive. And number two, you are exploiting her body to every onlooker that is looking. And there's been times where, like in family sessions or in couples therapies, I've had to point that out to men who are not predators and really just don't know. And I've had to say, hey, that behavior, are you aware that that's a form of sexual abuse? And they break and cry. And I'm like, and he's, I would never do that to my wife, or I believe you. So don't ever let it happen again because this is what it was. Because you also get that aspect of it too, of people who are not molesters or not chronic rapers that are like, I would never do that. And it's not, you may have not known. What's really cool, I am not going to say the name, but I had a brother in Christ one time tell me, you know, after I learned what I learned about sexual abuse, not through me, just like their own journey, um, I kind of learned a lot of things that I did wrong in my
Mm.
youth, like taking advantage of drunk girls and blah, blah, blah. And it was so cool to hear that because that gave me so much peace and hope about society
Yeah.
and men learning and growing. And you know what I mean? So I think that's another hard thing too. But when you brought that up about you're going to take it a step further, the guy dragging her, I completely
Yeah.
agree. Whether he meant that or not, that's what happened. And that's what
Right.
happens when our culture has a lack of education, you know?
Yeah. I mean, but it's like it's the same thing about with the mom seeing me. What that sent a message to her that day. of
Mm.
you did this. You are part of what happened. So you're naked in the room. That is your fault too. And I'm gonna
And you know what?
drag you across the street.
And you know what other message it might send to people? By the way, that's okay.
Right,
By the way, in the future, you let people do that.
right,
Right? It says you're wrong, but then it also says, like, hey, it's okay for you to not stick up for yourself. It's okay for you to not, say no, even though we freeze. I'm not saying anybody's done anything wrong if they didn't say no, because I never said no. But it also just paints a picture of this whole of what just happened, even though I'm being shamed, but clearly what just happened because he's not being yelled at is okay. So
right,
I need to be permissible again, and my body is everybody for the taking, you
right,
know?
right.
It's terrible.
Ugh, yeah, it's
I know.
horrible.
This is a tough topic we're doing, but I'm glad we're doing it because even though it may be a little, you know, um, triggering for others or for us, it is worth it for every bit of psychoeducation that this population is going to gain, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and awareness is just a part of the story, if you have awareness, it's the small education tool,
Yeah.
but most importantly, if you relate to anything that we're talking about, we definitely want to point you to get healing, go to
Yeah.
counseling, deal with it because having language is only one portion of of what God wants to do in the bigger part of your story.
Amen.
So the next question is, can you explain consent in a way that helps survivors understand why age, power, authority, or trust change what consent actually means? From a counseling perspective, how do you help clients sit with a new clarity without feeling overwhelmed or re-traumatized?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this kind of coincides a little bit with like the testimony I gave about that boss and power dynamics. So there's different forms of consent. There's the first old school one, and it is traditional and still valid. Consent is yes or no. I told you no and you still did it. Powerful, tangible, easier for people to believe. That is a form of consent. And I use that with women as well. Did you tell them no? Yes, but I didn't fight him. I don't care. You said no, but I was drunk and I said, no, I don't care. You said no. But then there's also the consent, like in my case, right? And this is the gray area where with that boss I told you about it, I did not say no to him, but with the threat and the power dynamics, a predator can corner you into a corner where you don't even have the choice to consent or not, where you're going to feel the pressure of having to say yes. That's what grooming is all about. Grooming is so they get you to not to consent. So we have to be careful with that word so much because if we throw the word consent too early or too loosely to a client, they're going to completely shut down and not talk. Oh, well, I consented, so I guess that yeah, I have no say in this. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Like you said, Nicole, I love the description you gave in the beginning. Were your boundaries violated? Did the person have any form of power over you? Was it such a violation of boundaries and humanity that you froze and said yes out of fear? So I feel like you can never just take face value if somebody consented or not. It's easy when they say no, they didn't consent. But if they say yes, they did, before you just shut them down, we have to say as a society, not even just as ministry leaders like you and I or counselors, as a society, tell me more of what happened and then help them work through it. And I also love how you said the rationality of we're not over here trying to say that 110% everything is sexual abuse. We are not. But our purpose of this podcast is to help people stop minimizing for the people that it was. So it's all about tell me more, get full context. As believers, we do that with the Bible. As you mature in your faith, you don't just read a verse, you get the full context. You know what I mean? So, somebody may have consented and said yes, but 2 weeks before that, they were told that their mother or father is going to get killed. If they're like, you know what I mean? And so, in another way, the last part of the question that you asked was, how do we do it without re traumatizing them? This is going to be a controversial answer. They're probably going to get triggered. Part of the therapeutic and healing process is to allow a trigger to come up and to teach that individual, number one, to feel it and see that they're safe enough. It's like confronting a bully. You see the bullet, you see the gun, but oh, wait, I was safe. I was okay. There was a little bit of a trigger there. And then on top of that as well, what we do in Trees of Hope and Calvary House for Women is now let's work on that trauma response that we just saw happen.
Yeah.
But where the balance is like I told you, if you're getting in a healing journey at some point, we are going to break the denial and name it. But there's also a spiritually, it's being led by the Holy Spirit, right? Waiting for the timing of is this girl ready or not? Okay, spiritual discernment. But then there's also something called attunement in therapy. So attunement is basically sensing what that individual is feeling on the inside. It's one thing to sense that this individual really doesn't trust me yet because we're building a relationship. So she might run. She's really, really scared. You know what I mean? But then it's one thing to also sense she's ready for more, but she's in denial. We're going to break the denial. So, and anybody can do this. I tell friends of mine, like who aren't even therapists, like, please look up what attunement needs.
Yeah.
Cause I feel like it will just help communities and families. You use that word parenting and healing a lot as well when you psychoeducate your population. But, you have to have the discernment and attunement to confront it at the appropriate time. Don't let it linger. But the first or second time somebody's even talking about this, just listen, let them
Yeah.
get used to talking about it. If I normally let them talk about it like maybe, 2 to 3 times, and then around that anywhere from 3 to 5, I'm like, okay, I have all the details. Can we talk about what this is? No,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's hard because I notice a lot of women want, or men too, they wanna focus on the
yeah,
details and rehash the
yeah,
details, but
yeah.
people don't understand that that does you no good over and over. That actually
Over and
will pause your healing journey. Now
mm-hmm.
the focus is, and what I try to help women understand is we are here not to go over graphic details, but to find out how it's affected you. What
Mm,
happened, how it
yeah,
affected you, what it took from you,
yeah,
what it
yeah.
prevented you from becoming.
Well, when you say that, um, I relate to that like honest like 9 out of 10. But there's one thing I do a little differently, but I think you do this too because you guys trained me to be a leader in Trees of Hope. I do have them talk about it in those first 1 or 2 sessions, the details,
Yeah.
because it's them facing. But then we think about, you talked about grieving, which I'm huge on. And we do that in narrative therapy. We get the clients to just basically tell their story, because what happens is the grieving process internally starts, and there's different, right, the 5 stages of grief: denial, bargaining, anger, all that fun stuff. And if you're watching this, look up the 5 stages of grief. You grieve any traumatic event in life, it's phenomenal, and the Lord uses it, but they can get stuck, like you said. So what I try and do in therapy with them is, okay, let's talk about what happened, tell me everything that happened, and now we're going to move forward to a place of talking about the effects and all of that. But I remember doing this in Trees of Hope, but we have to initially name it. And that's where I think Trees of Hope is a little different from therapy. And that's why I love that you tell them to do both. You have referred both off. You have referred so many girls to me. And then that's why coupling is very good, because in that group setting, the too many details is not edifying or beneficial to another woman
Yeah.
there at
Yeah.
all.
I actually rewrote the facilitator guide to make it clear to people, we don't go into the first
Yeah,
we let them go at their own pace. So if you wanna
yeah,
share your story, but I always give the example, I was sexually abused at 6 years old. I don't go into what happened. I just say I was sexually abused at 6 years old and blah, 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 blah from there.
sure.
What I'm trying to find a happy medium because right now in
Hmm.
my group, everyone's following my lead and pretty much we know
Yeah.
everyone's been sexually abused.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I'm not hearing the same, like the story of like he raped me, he
Yeah.
sodomized me. Like we've calmed that down.
Well, I wouldn't do it in the group setting. I think what you're doing is perfect. And that's why I think us partnering on so many levels has been such a God sent move. Because number one, girls who have been sexually abused that end up in addiction, you can refer to Calvary House. Calvary House, we send all of our girls to Trees of Hope. And then you've added the counseling part of it, of sending them to other counselors, not even just me, but it's appropriate settings. Even in the home with the women in group settings, and I'll tell you why. Because when they get re traumatized, there's only one of you. So there's not enough therapeutic professionals to be able to walk them through that when they're in the middle of a trigger that can be so dangerous. So where I was more talking about, it's healthy to do the details, just to clarify. So in case a bunch of women get together as a group, you better watching this in a therapeutic setting with a therapist who's going to properly walk you through it, and then make sure you get to the other side of it and continue to move forward. And even with that, for people who are seeing the therapist, because not every therapist is healthy. Unfortunately, some people have therapy trauma, which a whole nother story. Um, Even then, if your therapist is having you say details over and over and you're a month in, I would challenge how much you and that therapist are really seeing fruit together. Because by that point, not that you should be healed, but you should be talking about the effects or other stories that it has led to. So, in the group setting of Trees of Hope, that's not the space for the details. But that's why, which I love, more of your women from Trees of Hope, they're starting to come to me while they're in Trees of Hope, which I love. It's not just after anymore. And it's great because you know me, I'm going to die on the sword about Trees of Hope. So it's so easy to walk them through it. But that's why therapists, that's why you are trained, Nicole, to do what you do. And that's why there's clinical therapists who are trained for this.
Yeah.
So there is a space for it that I think everybody needs to visit, but the right space with the clinician at the right time. So I know I love that you clarified that, because that is exactly what I meant.
Okay. Good.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
glad to hear that because it's almost like you end up carrying not only your own story, but as a facilitator, it's so hard to hear 20 women share their story. And there was like an idea of like, do I bring a timer in and be like buzzing when they're talking because they're going on? Because a lot of times they're rambling
yeah.
when they're
For
telling.
trauma dumping. And
Yeah.
the therapy is the space to trauma dump.
Yeah.
Our Pastor Doug says something that I think that, and you've probably heard him, you've been around forever. Um, that is so good for women like me and you, or any, if there's other leaders on here that are helping other women heal. He's like, he has so much respect, and he's always praying for it, the men and women who are helping other men and women heal, because they're constantly getting re-traumatized, or if it's not re-traumatized because they've had some headway and they're healing like you and I, they're hearing these stories and they can't help but get poked and stung thinking about it. And that's also why, like, people don't know what you and I have done behind the scenes. And it's not to boast, but we also have years of training to where we are able in a healthy way to detach from that and to know what to do. That shouldn't just be every and anybody who's doing that as well. That's why you train your facilitators. So it can be very damaging. I agree with you.
Yeah, actually Pastor Stefan said to me one day, he's like, basically he was like, what I love about the role that you play is you are like Meshach, Abednego, and
You've never said this. Yeah.
okay. And what's the third one? I forget his name.
Praying
Shadrach,
fire.
Meshach, and Abednego.
There you go.
When they
Yes.
got tossed into the fire and they
Mm,
didn't get burned by the flames. And when they came out, they didn't even smell like
smell
smoke.
like smoke.
And he's like,
Yeah.
because when every time you go into a healing group with another woman on healing groups, you're jumping into the fire, but you
Yeah.
don't come out with their residue on you.
I
You come
love
out
that.
not even smelling like smoke.
I
And I
love
was like,
that.
well, brother, I need that because I don't. And somebody had asked me, is that disassociating? Are you disassociating then?
No, that's
Like, no,
different.
I'm protecting my soul.
Well, I can tell you therapeutically, as therapists, there's a balance of being emotionally attuned and showing compassion and empathy, but also we're trained to set emotional boundaries where we know how to show attunement and compassion when it's necessary, but not take it on wholeheartedly, or there'd be no therapist.
Yeah.
Every therapist would be burnt out and done within a year or two. So no, you're not dissociating at all. You're trained. And the
Yes.
Lord has equipped you for your role. So,
Right.
I'm sorry for anybody who has said that or thought that, because it's ignorant, and again, it goes back to all of this, a lack of education. That's why, another thing, side note, I love what a lot of churches do, but our church, or Calvary, does it. The CBAS training. So any volunteer, any staff members, they have to take a child sexual abuse training to learn
Yeah.
to see signs and all that. But in that training, you learn so much. And so there's psychoeducation around sexual abuse that they have to learn. And
Yeah.
it's great, you know?
Yeah, and it's also good because that's actually a place when you do have that protector for your
Yeah,
staff and your team, if
yeah,
somebody is an abuser, they won't be able to watch that.
yep,
They won't, that'll be
100%.
like a red flag. Like, okay, no offense to
Yeah,
the guys, but a guy can't watch this. What's the problem? I'm not saying to go in and be like, are you an abuser? But
yeah.
it's a hurdle for them to get over, and usually that's a red flag. But then also it's a red flag when a woman, because that's actually something that happened. A woman came to my group
Mhm.
and she said she tried to volunteer with the kids ministry and she had to do that, and the grooming came up and she actually had to turn it off, and she told her leader, I can't finish the video. And so for me, that would have been for me to lean into. If I would have heard that, I
Mhm.
would have said,
Yeah,
okay, what's causing you to not be able to
yeah,
finish that,
yeah,
specifically at the grooming section? Is this something that
yeah,
you relate
exactly.
to?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. 100%. And that does come up a lot. And that's again where situations like that where women are, you know, like she had to shut down because of the grooming. And the appropriate setting you could say is God trying to do something. You know,
Yeah,
if he's not, we never want to say God is if he's not, but a lot of the times he is. He's trying to reach a different area of their hearts and he's using this church training to
yeah,
do it and maybe say, hey, so before you serve, or after you get through the video, we have this great Trees of Hope group, you
right.
know, because God will expose those things to get people to heal because He wants to restore and redeem, you
Yeah,
know. And
I,
that's also another thing I want to say on here, like with everything everybody's learning about psychoeducation, when you do start to become aware of things and when you do start to notice effects, don't shame yourself because it's not only you're not damaged goods at all. Like Nicole said, oh, I love that area of scripture. You do not smell like smoke. Healing allows you to really not smell like smoke, but you do not smell like smoke at all. But God will highlight things. God
yeah,
will say, see that right there? I want you to heal from that so you can be set free. So sometimes your triggers, and as you're, you know, maybe listening to us and realizing so much, it's not a bad thing. It's the Lord pursuing you and saying, this is an area I want you to heal in, you know?
yeah. Yeah, and so that's actually where I want to close. If
Yeah.
this episode has stirred up anything in you, please take your time with it. But and you definitely don't have to rush clarity. You definitely don't have to rush this language. One, I would love for you to reach out to Trees of Hope, and you can do that by going onto our website at treesofhope.org, or check out Shannon's counseling
Yeah.
website. You want to give that to?
Absolutely, yeah. It's gracefulgiftingcounseling.com. And you can see all my information there. Again, that's gracefulgiftingcounseling.com. You can even book an appointment. And to add to that as well, if anybody who's watching this, part of your coping mechanism with sexual abuse, if you're struggling with addiction or any form of trauma, we also have Calvary House for Women affiliated with Calvary Chapel Church, where you can come for a year if you're willing to heal, and you would go through Trees of Hope as part of the curriculum as well. But yeah, we have a bunch of options. And then on top of that, me and Nicole both just have so many other resources.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so please check it out. Anything that we can do to serve you, it's our honor and it's our pleasure. And so please come back and keep checking out these videos because I really think they can be helpful if you're
yeah.
willing to keep doing that hard work, investing in yourself. So thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye guys.